Hi everyone, my name is Renee Huang. I'm the founder of Wild Women Tribe and your host for the Ignite podcast. Today we're sitting down with Cree Cox and Sara Sergent to talk about the topic of finding your inner voice and self-expression. So I'm excited to welcome you guys both here. Thank you for joining me. Sara and I know each other from being moms in Park City, and you're a big supporter of Wild Women Tribe. We have some upcoming events this summer at Alpine Distillery, which is what you own with your husband Rob.
Yes.
And then you also have an apparel company, Mountain Flower Apparel.
Yes.
And then Cree and I have like recreational hobbies in common, and she is this beautiful women empowerment, women wellness coach, I would say, right, down in Salt Lake. And you'll tell us a little bit more about the specifics as we delve into the topic of finding your voice.
Yep.
So let's actually start there, and really, I want to hear from you what you both have on that topic of what does self-expression mean to you?
Wow.
Do you want to start, Cree?
Sure, I'll go. I mean, in general, I would say self-expression is an ongoing thing. It's always shifting, changing, and very dynamic. When I look at how I expressed myself as a young child compared to how I express myself now and everything in between, there's been so many different forms of it. I think ultimately a really big part that comes with that is self-identity and knowing myself. And then how do I share what I know as myself with the world, and how I dress and what I do and where I shop and what I do with my life, and really just having a congruency with expressing my inner self to the external world. That's what I'd say.
Nice. I'm so glad you went first. I like that. I think about finding your, it's just, yeah, I'm constantly, I think, in almost reinventing myself. There's that common core, that common theme since I think I was, 5 or 6 years old, when I clearly remember who am I, where am I going, and it's always, I kind of go back to that, whether, depending on different businesses I've had or how I do things and my involvement in the community, and it's exciting. The older I get, the more comfortable I get in my own skin. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, self-identity has been ever evolving, like you have said, Cree, and it's at different points in my life I've been more comfortable and than other points in my life, and I really feel like there was a point in my late 20s, I was married, and I was, a mom, and it was just, I really felt like my voice is not present at all, and it wasn't a conscious thing, but I think it was like this moment where I was waking up and feeling like kind of not even in my own life, observing it from afar, where it was a wake-up call. It was something that took many years to actually step out of, but I remember feeling like this is not me, and furthermore, I don't actually know who me is, so I don't know if you can relate to those feelings at all or stages in your life.
Definitely. Having 3 boys at different stages, there were moments exactly. You go through this, you have the independence, you're going on this track, whether you're in college or just on the career path, and you get married and you get into this role, and then all of a sudden you become a parent and you're wearing then multiple hats because you're a caregiver first and foremost, and then all these things kind of go to the side, whether intentionally or unintentionally, like you said, and then you're just almost busy, and it's never good to just be busy, and then you lose sight of, I remember when I used to do this or used to do that, and it takes a while. I think that's a normal cycle of women, is especially as they come into motherhood, is that independence, getting that, and then going into motherhood and kind of losing sight, focusing more on creating this home, creating a safe environment, and then waking up going, wait, why am I stressed? I'm stressed because I don't, what am I doing for me? And it's exciting and it's scary at the same time.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you for sharing that, because I think that's a common theme.
What about you, Cree? Have you had cycles in your life where, your voice has been absent and you've learned to step into that?
Definitely. A lot when I was younger, and as I've gotten older and made my way through my 20s, I'm 31 now and not yet a mother, but I teach a lot on the cycles of womanhood, and it's always so fascinating to hear moms talk because that's such a common theme. And I actually just did this in a women's circle on Monday. We were talking about the seasons of womanhood, and that's one of the hardest transitions. Like first it's kind of like the adolescent switch, and then you like enter into like more of your 20s, and you kind of like feel like you know yourself a little bit more, but you're still in that maiden energy. But then motherhood comes in, and it's like you lose self, you lose that sense of identity, everything that you gained. It's like all about like home space and kids and providing a good life for them, and then it becomes a journey of like the return to self in a whole new way. So since I haven't embarked on that, I'm kind of in this like really solid place of identity, and I'm curious to see how my experience will be when I do enter into motherhood, because I feel very solid in that now, and I know that it's just part of the cycle and it will shift and change.
How did you get to a place where you were solid, where you were able to say, this is my voice and I'm going to speak it, and I'm going to allow my life to be something that I am empowered to not control, but really have a lot of involvement in?
I'd say that a big part of the journey started when I was right around 18, 19. I did this 9-day retreat with my family called The Awakening, which was just this huge eye-opening experience. And it was really a deep dive into the inner realms and just bringing a lot of awareness to like the choices in our life and how we've gotten to where we are and all these different things. And then I decided to enroll in a 9-month course it was called Dreammakers Academy. I think the name has changed, but at that point I had no idea, no concept of what self-love was. And I was like, okay, we can pick a goal. Like, I want to know what self-love is. Like, I can't even say anything good about myself. So like, I want to discover what this means for me. And so I invested in this 9-month program where we met every other week with a group, and we did all sorts of workshops and trainings, and there were a lot of different things that we would do, exercises where it was like we would be up in the room as though we were presenting, and we would dress a certain way, and people would give us feedback like, oh no, that doesn't really fit you. We'd come back the next day in something different, and they'd be like, oh, that's so good for you. And so that really helped me to like become refined in who I was. And then as I developed a sense of self-love and self-confidence, then I felt more capable of expressing my voice. And there was a lot of things I had to go through in that experience of like with this support team of like calling this guy that I had a crush on, and things went awry with it, and I was like so heartbroken, and they were like, you need to call him and tell him. And I was like, this is so scary, I don't think I can do it. And I like sat down, and I literally had to like sit and meditate and breathe, and I was like, called him, he didn't answer, went to voicemail, but I said what I needed to. And the sense of empowerment that came through after doing that, I was like, whoa, there's something to this, even though it's so scary and so intimidating. And so then I just continued and still continue to have that practice. And it's a practice, it's an ongoing thing. Sometimes I'm way more confident in it, and other times I'm not.
Do you feel, Sarah, like you have had instances in life where you've had to really speak up for yourself?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Who hasn't? I never know what you're going to ask, so I'm like, what's she going to say? Yeah, I think there's that pivotal time, that 17, 18, 19 years old, where something's going to happen, something's going to trigger how you see things, or how you present yourself. I always wanted to be the best that I could be and travel and do these things. And unfortunately, the town that I lived in back when I was in high school, there was a school shooting, and it was it kind of rocked everything, because it was one of those first ones that people were aware of, and it was unfortunate because I knew the kids. I helped tutor those kids. I didn't go that day because I was making up a calculus test so I could go to the track meet, and there were a lot of feelings on that. And I think, for me, that's when all of a sudden there was not just, we're doing great, we represent, we volunteer, we do these things. All of a sudden it was like, well, no, these are serious things, we need to talk. And for me, unfortunately, then again, there was another incident almost a year later in Colorado, in Columbine, and a few of us were brought in to talk with the other kids who had gone through it in just those recent weeks, and that's when, for the first time, I was saying what I really felt, and not just to be loud or just to be heard, but in a way that I was expressing myself about fears or concerns I had, or how things could become better out of something that was extremely unfortunate.
So you felt like a sense of empowerment through expressing where you were with clarity.
I felt, for the first time, I felt I could be a resource for someone who is going through something similar. Instead of taking it and digesting it on my own, talking to someone else and realizing things happen, whether it's a breakup, it's a fortunate incident like that, or something even wonderful. Sharing that with other women, men too, but in this case, sharing it with other women, all of a sudden it really opens up something where, instead of having those feelings internally and just being like, I'm so nervous, I'm so scared, you can share that, and then it's really becomes something that is greater and really is, I think, is a good thing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Cree, I wanted to ask you about the work that you do with women. A lot of it centers around menstrual cycles and finding your own true north as a woman, and I wanted to hear you kind of describe that in the context of finding your voice.
Yeah, so I have a course that I've created. It's called Embody Your Flow, and essentially it's like teaching women everything that they should have learned about menstruation and they didn't. And it's a really beautiful blend of science meets spirituality meets healing. So it's really knowing what's going on in the body physically, but also the spiritual components of the menstrual cycle as well. So I've been working really intentionally as like a course of self-study for 3 solid years with my menstrual cycle, and not just when I'm bleeding, but like we're always somewhere in our cycle. Every day throughout the month, and there's 4 different phases that we go through, and each of them have different energetic components to them, and so I use it as a way to schedule more cyclically instead of so linear. Like, we're in such this linear 9 to 5 Monday through Friday world, and women were cyclical beings, and so I structure my life and I work for myself, so I'm really easily able to do this in a way that supports me in each phase of my cycle. I mean, even when you asked me to do this, I was like, well, if we were gonna do it last week, I was like, I'm gonna be like the day before I'm bleeding, the least inspired of my cycle, and like separating hardcore from the outside world. So we can do it and see what happens, or we can wait a week. And now I'm like feeling in much better space to be here. And so it's just a great awareness and navigation tool to use that to speak to where I'm at within relationships and partnerships or different engagements that come up. It's just a really good reference point, because I've learned the hormonal influences and how I'm gonna be in the state I'm gonna be in, so I'm no longer questioning like, what's wrong with me? I was feeling so great last week and now everything seems to be like falling apart. And I'm like, oh no, it's just the phase of my cycle I'm in, and I can have a gentleness with myself and speak up for what I need to those loved ones in my life and help them better understand too.
So being gentle with yourself and knowing that it's just a phase, right? I mean, I think a lot of times we like put so much emphasis on the thoughts that are floating through our heads, when it's like, oh, it's just a thought. I mean, you don't have to attach to it, right? It'll be gone. You'll be thinking about something else, and you'll come back to that same thought like maybe 800 times that day, but it's okay. It's all right. I think there is a lot to that, as we try to find our voice or navigate who it is that we are and get to know ourselves, paying attention to, or not, to the thoughts that we're having, and the cyclical nature of just being a human.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
So Sara, you had mentioned as we were sitting down that there are some tools that you employ to kind of help listen to the voices and like give yourself the clarity and priority in the many, many hats that you juggle.
Yeah, but I think, gosh, if I'd known what you know now, I'd be a lot calmer. No, I think that's great, and I do believe with that cycle and that flow, and that's especially in my case as a whether it's as being a female or a business owner, there's definitely that roller coaster within a day where it's like, I'm great, I'm gonna get all these things done, and it's like, oh no, what have I done? Is there enough time? And coming back to those different thoughts 800 different times a day. And I like the way you said that, Cree, is when you know yourself personally and you know what's going on, you can then tackle the day, tackle the week, tackle the month. And so for me, I like to, it's kind of prioritizing, I think, as we were talking about when we have multiple hats that we wear. And it's, for me, it's just putting together what are the goals I want to accomplish for the day. What am I going to do? And goals, we can kind of move and flow, and I learned that from Mary Gwynn at Rise Boxing, but if it becomes our to-do list, then we're going to do it. So the night before, kind of as things are wrapping up, I'm like, what are the 6 most important things I'm going to do tomorrow? And because I have 2 different businesses, I have kids, I have volunteer commitments, I want to make sure that I'm hitting all those, and then I'll have like 20, 30 little sub things, whether even it's like, remember to go to the post office, or we need this from the store, or don't forget to drop this off. But that really helps, because I can come back to that, and no matter how I'm feeling or where I'm at, I just know, okay, we're going to focus on these 6 right here, give it everything we have in that moment, and we're going to get to the rest, because tomorrow the sun's still going to come up, and we can just get it done then, and if we don't get to it today.
So it's a matter for you of being intentional beforehand and paying attention to the things that you most want to do to honor yourself.
Yes, in an effort to find myself or make that time for myself, even if it's just getting up a little bit before everyone else does, make the coffee, and I do my stretches on the floor, and I'm thinking about my day. If those are those few moments I have, I know that all the stuff that's either got to go to school or the office, it's already in my car. Like even in little places around, just so I've got this got to go here, this is going to do this, and it's a calmer morning. And I try to instill that with the kids, like the night before we pack our backpacks, we get our set, so we can have breakfast together, be calm, and greet the day with a sense of calm and understanding and being gentle to ourselves instead of just diving right in. So
nice. Cree, do you have instances in your life where it's been difficult to speak your true self or express your voice? And can you give any examples of when you were challenged and you overcame that?
Yeah, I mean, that one example I gave earlier is one, and it was definitely very present when I was younger. My mom, her journey of her life has been really finding her voice and being her voice, and she was, kind of like mousy and really intimidated to speak up and all these different things, and that was the example that I had growing up. And it goes down her bloodline too, and so there's like ancestral things, and just being a woman in this culture too, I think there's a lot to that. And the way it's showed up for me, I'm just feeling like I want to speak a little bit to the body experience, is it shows up very viscerally. I oftentimes can feel a heaviness in my chest, a restriction in my throat, tightness in my belly, and just like my whole body just kind of clenches up because there's something that wants to express itself and I'm not allowing it. I'm not allowing that expression to flow through. And so I've noticed like times when I have not expressed things, like it ends up getting in my jaw, and my jaw gets really tight and tense. And I've been a body worker for 10 years, and I see this all the time in people. And so just having practices of, I think a lot of it goes back to the more that I've learned to value myself, the easier it's been to speak up for where I'm at and what I need. And now it's at a point where it's just not really a question for me to be able to do that, and I just really like strive to live authentically, and I use my body as an indicator as like when I'm doing that and when I'm out of balance and maybe not speaking something when I need to.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. We learn so much to inhibit, I think, our bodies and to not pay attention because we want to control and we want to, power through, and all these kind of negative connotations of like feeling the signs or your body telling you something, but then you're just like oppressing it. And similarly, like I had years of my life where I was a young mom and running businesses and just not feeling like the life that I led was one that I was choosing. And I had so much resentment and anger and just all of these really negative kind of feelings that, at the time I was married. And so it was very easy to point the finger of blame and say, well, it's, this external thing that is making my life so difficult. And then fast forward to now, and I've become divorced. And in a way, the blessing is that I no longer have that to blame for the things that I'm not satisfied with. And so I really, part of that whole separation process was like finding my voice and having no excuses anymore. So it's all me, right? Which was, it ended up being a beautiful opportunity to say, okay, well now I get to be real and I get to empower myself and really speak up and find what it is that is going to inspire me. So I think a lot of us, in the path of discovering our voices, really have to go back to the self-love like you were talking about, and just give ourselves and honor ourselves in that space of, you gotta find what it is that makes you tick, right? Do you
Even
have,
if it takes a really long time.
Yeah.
well, do you have experiences with that, Sarah, like of having to really come back to your core and saying, whoa, what really is what matters to me?
Yes. I had for a long time, a little thing that was called the disease to please. You talked about your mother and your, what you learned from her and how you kind of look for that guidance. And my mother, my grandmother, I have there's a lot of love, but there's a lot of hardness and a lot of, life lessons. And I always just wanted to be, I'm very good, with a shiny little star. And I think for me, I learned a lot about myself when my parents got divorced and I was in college, because I just did what they said and I was like, I'll just, do this. And then they got divorced and started looking to me for advice, or they're like, oh, I feel this way. And I was like, oh, what is happening? Why is this happening? Like, it was really taking in, going, oh my gosh, I just thought you guys knew everything. It was a very Donna Reed, a show from the 50s, something like that. Where you're like, oh, you just, it's great. And I think for me, just fortunate in this opportunity is, as I was figuring that out and finding myself, like, well, what do I want? How do I want to live these things? And I had a chance running. I met my husband shopping at Target. And I was leaving New Orleans and I was going to move, and I met this guy and I changed my life and didn't move, and we've been married ever since. And I think what was the greatest thing about that is I was trying to find myself. And I think sometimes in our early years, he's like, gosh, you're so hard on yourself. You're so hard on these things. And now fast forward, we've been married for quite some time. Then we have the 3 kids, as I had mentioned. But I get more and more comfortable with myself. And I'd say probably it was 10 years into our marriage. And I just was, I don't know, it was just a series of things. I was getting more and more comfortable with myself. I was going to, if they say in some of the mindfulness and meditation practices is don't should on yourself. Mm-hmm. So I was working on don't should on myself. I should be this, should be that. And I got more and more uncomfortable in my skin. And with doing that, similar, we said, I realized, my husband's like, I love you and I want to be with you. And I became more comfortable myself. And now coming into the 40s, I think I'm happier than I've ever been, because I just, I find some of that teenage aspect or that early 20s aspect that, I thought I lost with early motherhood and career and things like that. So I think that's a great point that you made about, we think it's something external, but once we start looking in, and that journey is hard and sometimes it's ugly, but then you realize, okay, so whether you surround yourself, whether it's the relationship makes sense. Sometimes the best is to get out of the relationship. My parents are much better people now. They're not together. But I think that's really is when you start looking in and you eliminate any point of blame, you really can just focus on all the great stuff. I think you're amazing. I only know you at this great point, so I don't know that. I don't know the previous life.
But I think when you do the work on yourself and you take away the excuses and the finger pointing, then you learn your own boundaries in a good way, so you can learn how to say no in a very firm but respectful and self-loving way, and then the people around you respond to that. Mm-hmm. Right? Because if you, I was a pleaser as well, if you only please, then people will just kind of assume, well, this person is just going to say yes to everything that I ask them, and almost give people permission to take advantage of you. So I think for me, finding my voice has been becoming more clear in my yeses and my nos. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In a good way.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to that. One of the things they would have us do in that 9-month workshop that I did was like, for people who no was really hard for them, everything was a no with a but let me think about it, so that they could really have that opportunity to, for one, say no, which was difficult for them to do. And I took this into practice too. And then it was followed up, but let me think about it. Like, this isn't a hard no. Unless it was a hard no, then that was it. And then it gave you the time to tune in and be like, is this something I want to do? Yeah, actually I do want to do this. And it could be like a few days that you would think about it and really be in that no before choosing into a yes, or following up with, no, this is still a no for me, I'm not going to do this.
And it's hard to do at first.
Yeah.
Right. I remember the first couple of times I said no, and I felt like, am I going to disappoint someone? Am I letting someone down? You know, what will they think? Because I've normally always said yes. I mean, it really is like a hard, kind of vulnerable space to put yourself in, because like we all want to be accepted and loved and turned to, I guess. So
I'm gonna use that. Let
Yeah.
me think about that for a moment.
do you guys have
I like
any
that, the space.
other tips?
Yeah.
Because that was a good one.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Well, and just what you were saying about like knowing your yes and your no, I feel like our bodies are always speaking to us. And so that can be an indicator. Like you have to take it on as a practice. I like to look at everything in life as a practice. We're all like figuring out how to be human beings on this planet, and like everything is just a practice. It's all part of the journey. And so like a yes generally in the body feels lighter, it feels more expansive. There's this feeling of like, oh, I want to move towards whatever that thing is. There's an expansion to it. And then a no generally feels heavier, and there's more of a contraction and a pulling away from, and just something like your guts might tighten up or your shoulders or something. It's like, ugh, like you can usually feel and you don't want to do it. And then you say yes, and then you end up having thoughts of like, oh, I shouldn't have said yes to that. I really didn't want to do it. So make note of that in the moment and learn from it, and like take a second to tune into your body before answering. And our bodies are speaking to us and letting us know where things are at. We just have to be present with them and tuned in and listening.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's giving some nice space to take on that clarity. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it helps take off the pressure so that we can really like tune in and be like, what is my truth in this moment? Because it's always changing.
Yeah.
Boundaries are always changing. It's an ongoing thing.
And sometimes you can't really rationalize your reasons for something, but if you feel into it and you let your intuition guide you, that's often the right route to go, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that good feeling.
Or it's the gut feeling, or whatever
Right.
you want to call it. But yeah, I think maybe the big takeaway from our conversation is like, just give yourself the space to listen to yourself, because you know what you want and what serves you. And yeah. Well, thank you guys for being here and for sharing your perspectives. They're beautiful and so helpful. And I want to give you the opportunity to share social media or ways that people can contact you if they want to reach out and find you.
Yeah, so right now I have my website. It's just my name, creecox.com. So it's CREECOX.com. I am on Facebook. That's the only social media, but I actually haven't been on for the past 4 months. I was going to do a 2-week social media break, and it's still ongoing because it's still just been a no. I've just been in this internal process, and I've needed to step away from all of that and all of like the pressures of being out there in the world and businessy things, and so I've just been honoring that. So there's not really anything on there as of late, but I will be back, and it's just my name on Facebook as well.
And you run a New Moon Women's Circle in Salt Lake every month, so people can reach out and find out more about that.
Yeah, there's a Facebook group called New Moon Woman, and you can just search that on Facebook and, yes, ask to join.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll check that out. You can find me in 2 different locations at Alpine Distilling. We have the website, Facebook, social media. So it'd be alpinedistilling.com or #AlpineMoment. And then my other company, Mount Flower Apparel, same thing, Mount Flower Apparel, or that's just the social media handle for all avenues on that.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. As we wrap up, I wanted to give a big shout out of thanks to Park City TV for being the media host and producing these Ignite podcasts. If you want to find out more about Wild Women Tribe, we've got lots of excursions and opportunities for women to connect in the outdoors on our website, wildwomentribe.net. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. Feel free to follow along on these podcasts as well. We're on Stitcher and SoundCloud and YouTube. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.